Welcome to our unit on fractions. Before we get started adding and subtracting and multiplying our fractions and dividing our fractions, we are going to talk a little bit about what they are and introduce some basic fraction vocabulary here. So, what are fractions? A fraction is a part-to-whole relationship. So, if we look at this picture here, we see that the teacher is one teacher to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 total people in the room. So as a fraction, I could write that as one teacher to, notice I'm using the word to, there are other ways to say fraction as well, we'll talk about later, 5 people. We could also say this as one teacher for every 5 people. And later, in later videos, we'll talk about how fractions also represent division. 2 words you really need to know for fractions are numerator and denominator. Your numerator tells you how many parts you have out of the denominator's number, which tells you how many total parts there are in one whole. That D, sometimes it's helpful for people to think D is for denominator, D goes down on the bottom. So for example, if I had a cake and I divided it up into 6 pieces, I'm really hungry, so I'm going to eat 2 of those 6 pieces. To express that as a fraction, I would say that I ate 2 out of 6 total pieces. 2 is my numerator. It tells me how many I have. 1, 2. Out of 6 possible pieces that I could have had. I could have had this one, I could have had this one, could have had that one. That's 3 possible pieces. Could have had 6 possible pieces, but instead I only actually ate 2. So my fraction is 2/6. Alright, vocab time. A proper fraction. Proper fractions are fractions where the numerator is less than or smaller than the denominator. For example, 4/5 is a proper fraction because 4, my numerator, is smaller than 5. 9/12 is a proper fraction because my numerator, 9, is smaller than my denominator, 12. Improper fractions, let's break that word down. Proper, we just talked about. Improper means not proper, the opposite of a proper fraction. If a proper fraction has to have the denominator being larger than the numerator, well then an improper fraction flips that upside down. 16/5. This means that you have 16 total pieces out of pieces where it takes 5 to make a whole. This might look like, if we drew it on fraction strips, 1, 2, 3, 4, there's fifths, 1/5, 2/5, 3/5, 4/5, 5/5. I have to keep drawing, okay? 6/5, 7/5, 8/5, 9/5, 10/5. Ooh, gotta still keep drawing. 11/5, 12/5, 13, 14, 15. Oh my goodness, this is a large improper fraction. 16/5. It actually represents a number that is greater than one whole. It's representing 1, 2, 3 wholes and 1/5. And this is actually called a mixed number. Mixed numbers are numbers that are made up from an integer, which is like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it could also be -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, -6. We're not going to talk about that until we have our unit on integers, but just know that that is coming. So it's made up from an integer and a proper fraction. Like our example on the last page, we could have 3 1/5. We could also have 17 and 22 23rds. Anything that has an integer and a fraction that are being held together is a mixed number. And those are our 3 fraction types. We talked about the fact that a fraction is a part out of a whole, like 4 people out of 5 people in my family are eating dinner with me tonight. There's an example of a fraction.